Hi guys. I'm not sure if people are aware of this or have even thought about it or if they even care, but I want to share it with you anyway. Um, all my books have a theme. So behind the cover, the pretty cover, hopefully pretty cover, behind the characters, behind, the little incidences that happen in the book, the subplots, the main plot, the chapter by chapter activity and so on, there's always kind of a theme. And what inspires the theme is usually something that I observe in everyday life, something I see, something maybe that kind of bothers me. And it somehow creates this whole book or series of books. I'm just going to get into the books. I'm just going to talk a little bit about each book very quickly. I'm not going to hold you up all day with a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just going to tell you very quickly so you know what I'm talking about. And if you're a writer, this is something you might want to keep in mind. If you're a new writer, I should say. If you're a writer, I'm not going to be condescending and say, this is something you should keep in mind. I mean, if you're a new writer and you're writing your first book, it's something to keep in mind in case you don't know. Anyway, so each of my books have, once again, a theme that people don't always know. So, my first two books was Fire and The Spark Before the Fire. I wrote these years ago. Not probably my best work. Not bad. I just, you grow and then you're like, I don't know if I should have done this or that. Beside the point. So these books on the outside, you got the pretty covers and you got hopefully pretty covers. I don't know. You like guitars. Pretty covers, cool characters. Tara, there's William and Jimmy and the whole love triangle thing and the whole band thing and them getting famous and people watching their every move and pretty much fame, right? Now, when I wrote these, social media was pretty new, so that didn't play a huge part. Of course, the books took place in the 90s, so it wouldn't have anyway. But I do talk about the media kind of getting involved in their life. The theme that kind of was in mind, and people are always surprised to hear this, but it was some stuff. I won't go into the specific celebrity, but there was a celebrity. She clearly was having a meltdown. And it was very sad to me, but everyone laughed at it. They thought it was hilarious. And I thought, what is wrong with our world when we think that somebody who's clearly troubled, who needs help, is a joke? And that really pissed me off. And when I was writing these books, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was keeping in mind because of course, they become famous, and people do get overly involved in their lives and things that they have no business getting into. Now, the reason why, and of course fame comes along later in the book, this first book, but I had to show that they're real people. So I had to show their lives up to that point. The struggles they had personally with self-image, with the music industry and kind of things they had to deal with, hurdles and so on and so forth. I had to show them as real people who just had to get into an extraordinary situation and how that how it gets exploited, how, they become famous and suddenly their whole life is out there as if it's not their life anymore. It belongs to the world, and that's not the case. And I really felt strongly about that. It really frustrated me. And, I probably didn't go as far as I could with these books, in retrospect. What I would do now, probably something very different. But that was my theme. That was what was in the back of my mind while I was writing these books. And I think most writers, whether they're writing a blog, a book, whatever it is, I think there's always something sort of in the back of their mind. Something that's kind of encouraging them to write that book, to get these little points in, and that's what my goal was for those books. Now, moving on very quickly. I feel like I'm rambling too much already. My third and fourth book about vampires. Her name is Mariah, the rock star. Vampires, kind of got a rock star thing going on, right? Well, those two books was probably a little more cynical. Okay, maybe not a little more cynical. I think both are probably cynical. I actually have notes here about this one. I wrote this morning. I said that the vampires actually represent our culture, and how we have bloodsuckers, vultures, whatever you want to call it, in our society. I know that's such a stretch, right? And that's how I felt at the time. I felt like, whether it was the news or everyday people, it just seemed like we had so much of that. And I felt like that actually was why at that time vampire books were so popular, because it kind of represented sort of a general sense of how people felt about the world. They felt like there were vampires in their own lives, and that's why the topic was becoming so popular. Now, for me, that's kind of how I felt too. I felt like, and also in these books, I both talk about how these are just everyday people that happen to be vampires. Hello. So you see the connection there, I'm sure. Everyday people that are vampires, everyday people in your life that's probably a vampire. And we have them. We all have them. And maybe we are vampires to somebody else. Who knows? Moving on. So I'm going to just quickly go into the topic of my last few books. Now, anyone who knows my last few books, I'll just pick up a couple of them here because there's too many to. There's like 5 in this series so far. I'm working on the 6th, but anyway. Of course, with George Hernandez and his whole crew, The Devil Smooth Like Honey, and then we have this one, and the Devil Will Laugh. I almost said the vampire. Stuck on vampires. And The Devil Will Laugh. Anyways, this is my baby. This is my favorite book. So, with these books, it's about crime and corruption and how the government's involved, and more involved than we think, and more involved than most people think. And do you see where I'm going with this? So the idea behind these books is sort of in general, because I talk about corruption, but I talk about in general, I should say, in general, that's the idea. The corruption, I'm getting all twisted up here. But it's not just with government, big corporations, sometimes religion. There's a lot of powers in the world, I strongly believe, that influence us, and there's a lot of money behind them, and they influence the media, they influence government, they influence everything, a lot of things, many things. That's kind of the idea behind these books. These guys kind of demonstrate how everything's sort of manipulated behind the scenes, and usually it's for money. And that sounds so cynical and terrible, but then you look at the world today and you do see a lot of examples, and this is not something new, and it's not something in that other country. It's sometimes even in our own countries. And that's kind of what George Hernandez says a lot. I'm from Mexico. They talk about corruption there. Well, there's corruption here too. Is there? I don't know. What do you think? The idea, though, and my kind of idea in my mind is, and maybe I just watch too many videos and documentaries that are sort of suspicious of corporations and such. We'll get into that a lot. And maybe that just makes me a little suspicious, but it planted the idea in my head, and I felt like through these books I kind of have to look into the topic and just sort of put it out there. What if this were the case? What if there is this kind of corruption going on? What if the government is influenced by corporations? I know that seems like such a stretch. Or by religious groups, or maybe they're influenced by criminals. Just saying. I don't know. What do you think? The idea is essentially that we have to kind of look at the big picture sometimes and think outside of what we think or thought was the way the world works, and kind of question things. And you might question things and go right back to where you started, but I think it's important that we question things. I think There's a lot of things going on in the world today that prove that we have to be questioning things a lot more and asking, even just within ourselves. So that means you don't have to go out and have a big debate with somebody about it, but kind of look at both sides and think about it and be like, yeah, that's interesting. Never looked at it that way. What if this is going on? And it's not to make everyone paranoid. It's just to make us all, as a society, to think. That's kind of my goal. That was my goal with these books. I bring things up in the topics up and put them on the table and just kind of leave them there for you to sort of sift through and kind of wonder. I don't know. What do you think? So that kind of gives you a very quick overview about what my themes are. And I know that I kind of rambled a lot in this video. This is like the longest video I've ever had in my freaking life. But it was important, and I think it's very important to talk about themes. I think that, again, if you're a new writer, this is something you should consider. And if you're a seasoned writer, you probably already do it. You probably have a theme in your mind that pushes you to write that book. There's something always behind it. You gotta remember that. What do you guys think? Is there certain themes that stick out to you, whether it be in my book, somebody else's books? Do you think they're important? Do you think they matter? Let me know. Find me on social media. I'm Mima on Fire. Have a great day.